These last classes have been part of a series on the facets of awakening heart, the different expressions of love. And so we explored loving kindness, which is the expression of love that arises very naturally when we bear witness to beauty and to goodness, to the mystery that's here. And then the facets of compassion and forgiveness that arise when we allow ourselves to really touch the suffering. There's a tenderness that comes. So tonight we'll be exploring joy, which is really both. Joy is when we've opened to what the Taoists call the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows, when we're just wide open and letting that aliveness move through us freely. And that is the experience of joy. It's kind of a wakeful aliveness. And it was an interesting thing to know. I had kind of designed in advance that I was going to do this sequence. And as I've shared in past talks, my mother entered hospice a few weeks ago. And so I was wondering what it was going to be like to be reflecting on joy. As you can imagine, it's just, it's a time that's filled with poignancy and beauty and sadness. And she's doing it very, very well. And today's her birthday, 88th. And so there was an interesting moment I'll share with you where one of my sisters suggested that the siblings and my mom get together and we do a picture. And we kind of gussied up for it a little. Well, I didn't as much, but we kind of prepped a little, and in the background in my mind, I said, "Oh, we're taking this picture, and then it'll be something when we're having a memorial service or something." There was this kind of a sense of the poignancy and the container of it. And there we were all set up, in our positions and posed. And just as the camera started shooting, my dog with her muddy paws and all just landed right on my mother's lap. And so there was this kind of hilarious moment, and that was actually the best picture of them all. And as I was settling around that, I just felt, in a way, what I described as joy, which is the sorrow, the sense of the space that knows the temporariness, and the beauty, and the fun and funniness, and the sweetness, and then just letting it all just swirl. And in that largeness that it was swirling in, that was a moment of joy. Then there was moments of annoyance when another dog came up and started pestering. We have two, so it goes in and out. So I wanted to maybe begin tonight's talk, as I often do when I'm reflecting on joy, with Andre Gide. And these are his words. Know that joy is rarer, more difficult, and more beautiful than sadness. Once you make this all-important discovery, you must embrace joy as a moral obligation. Now, rare. When I talk about joy, and when I talk to people about joy, I can sense for many of us the initial response is, this is not something I feel a whole lot. Most people do not feel a whole lot of joy, and also start feeling, oh, there's something wrong with me. If this is an expression of our spiritually awakened heart, there's something wrong with me that I'm always so grim or so whatever. So we get how easy it is to lock into this mentality of a stressed person trying to get things done, and how often our life gets small and we're not in that wide open space. So rare feels true to me. Now the word obligation. I don't, when Gide says we should take this as an obligation, I don't think of it in the traditional or classical sense of obligation. For me, it's more of a sense of a deep commitment, because we intuit that joy is part of our capacity or our potential. We intuit it, and that it's part of what we're dedicated to unfold all that we are, that this is possible. And so we give ourselves to serving that in that way. I also think of what many of you are aware of, what's described as our evolutionary bias, where we all practice patterns of thinking and feeling that are inclined towards what's difficult or problematic. And it is part of our evolutionary conditioning to do so, to protect ourselves from things going wrong. And so we're more involved with fear and with anger than with happiness and joy. That's the way we are designed in a way. So it takes intention to begin to shift that conditioned patterning. One woman I heard about discovered it in a quite lovely way. She was part of a diversity group that was meeting on the West Coast. A friend of mine was in and described this. This is an African-American woman who was sharing the challenges of raising her 4 children as a single mom, the bouts of illness she had been through, and particularly having illness. And then, as you know, when the market crashed, it hit so many of us, and it hit her quite hard. And then she says that one day I realized that this is hard, but I have a choice in attitude. That this was a really pivotal moment, the sense of I can be a victim, oppressed by circumstance, and really carry that around in my body, my face, or I can choose to be happy. And so she describes that it became the very center of her spiritual practice to give herself permission to internally slow down and really sense what she could enjoy, to open up her capacity for joy, and not in a Pollyanna-ish way, but just to begin to undo this habit of grimness. And if we're honest and we kind of look at ourselves, we get that there is a certain swath of moments where in some way there's an internal complaint. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Well, let's reflect for a moment. We'll just take this as our first moment to check in. And you might close your eyes. Just take a breath or two. And with a kind of curiosity, you might just review this last week. We're on a Wednesday. It could be a Wednesday to a Wednesday, or just the last handful of days. With the filter of moments of joy, was that there? Were there moments of real ease, of savoring? Of a kind of inner freedom where you felt just happy about just being? And as you're considering, you might sense what happens when you, it's just the possibility of deepening your commitment to choosing happiness, to choosing joy, to bringing your attention in a way to life that might cultivate joy. What happens when you consider deepening your commitment? Do you feel drawn? Do you feel like it's hopeless? Do you feel like it's manipulating your own consciousness? What happens? So we'll continue to reflect together, and I invite you to give yourself permission to explore, as if for the very first time, what it means to choose joy, to choose to let this be part of your experience. So we begin by looking a little closer and sensing, well, how come so little? I don't know how much it's cultural, but how come so little? for so many of us. And one basic understanding for me that helps to bring some clarity is that any moment that we're controlling our experience, or controlling another person, doing any controlling to try to make something happen or avoid something happening, are moments that we're not going to be experiencing joy, because joy is a really open-handed allowing. So if we're tensing against what's around the corner, and we know how often that is, that we have a sense something's around the corner that's too much to handle, or if we're preparing or rehearsing, or feeling that there's not enough time, that's going to go counter to a feeling of joy. Which is why actually we see a lot more joy in children. It's interesting, before their personalities harden, there's just less habituation around doing, around defending, around fixing, around not enough time. There's just more free spaces where spontaneity and play is free to unfold.